Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series.
Because creators are businesses.
What we do is not simple.
Give, the fans everything that they deserve.
Being creative
is like doing a 5,000 piece puzzle.
Is something that you can learn and do over and over again.
Always be as authentic as I can be.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I am thrilled today to have Mr. Rain Bennett here with me. He is the co-founder and CCO at Heartfelt. He's a filmmaker, he's an author, and he's the host of the Storytelling Lab podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here IRL, in real life, in person.
We were just talking about that, how excited we are to be doing this, to be out of our houses and to be seeing each other actually face to face. I want to get into, I love doing research on all my guests, and so getting down the wormhole with you, I want to get into kind of where you started in 2012, and you grabbed a camera and you went on this incredible journey. I would love for you to share this journey with everybody, because I was reading it, I was like, this is a little crazy, but also sounds really fun.
All right, cool, great. I'm already laughing, like smiling, because my wife has heard this story so many times. It's like a running joke in my family, and so when she hears it, just like it was 2014. I was living out of a backpack, traveling the world. Which is true, but she just heard it so many times.
She's like, we get it.
Yes, but it is to use storytelling terms, the inciting incident, right, of my hero's journey. Okay, I'm done with the, I'm not done. Okay, so I graduated from state in 2005. I started working on films. In fact, we created a film club there in 2004. Yeah. And I had already started working on narrative and documentary films, actually acting. I'm going even further back, by the way. And very quickly after graduating, even before graduating, I started learning documentary filmmaking, apprenticeship style. Like I worked under documentary filmmakers that were somewhat established, and kind of cut my teeth that way. Started my own production company pretty quickly after that. Built it up in Chapel Hill. I moved to Chapel Hill, built it up for the next 5 years, and then had a drastic 90-degree left turn in my life where I moved up to New York later than I should have. Not too late, but I grew up in Eastern North Carolina and Little Washington. I never even knew that some of these things were options, right? So I wish I'd have gone sooner, but I went. Took a lot of time, energy, money just to exist up there. It was not the romantic notion that I thought it might be. I'm going to write the great American novel and live, I did have a great, great time. Some of my absolute best memories were there, but it took a long time to find my footing. And I had left all of my contacts that I'd built up over 5 years to build a business in video production in North Carolina. Okay. And ultimately, I already had this idea for a feature documentary that was brewing at that point. Now I'm bringing us up to 2012. And just before I made that leap, I got a job in the industry up there at Deluxe Entertainment. It was a post house. So doing like the dailies for all the big shows and movies that came through New York. So famous people were in and out of the office every day. I mean, a great job to have. I was there during pilot season, so they need more help when they have more shows in March. And then before a lot of them drop off and don't get picked up for the fall season. So it was, late spring, early summer. I was there temporarily, and they wanted me to stay. And this idea that I had for the documentary had already started, and it was following an urban fitness subculture that was really birthed out of hip hop, to be honest, but out of the parks and playgrounds of New York. That's what I was following. And it has started to rapidly grow across the world because of YouTube and social media. And so there were events happening in other countries, like, Russian countries. Latvia specifically is where I went. And I was basically down to my last $1,000 or so, and I bought a ticket to, they called it street workout in the Eastern Bloc in post-Soviet countries. And they had the World Championship. They had one before, the year before was the first one, and I wanted to go. But I also had this job that was like this opportunity there. But I'm not cut out for the corporate space. And even though it was in film and television, it was still very much the corporate side of it. I was a project manager. So mostly just making phone calls and making sure we're meeting deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to make films. And so I went with my heart, and I went to Latvia and filmed for that week. And I came back and I was like, this is it. This is what I
Yeah.
want to do. I want to pursue that. So I spent the next 2 years basically. I put all my stuff in storage in Queens and did, in fact, with one backpack, one
Yeah.
DSLR camera, one little on-camera light, LED light,
Yeah.
one tripod, and just traveled and couch surfed around the world for the next year or so to make that film, which on paper sounds glamorous and fun, and it was.
Yeah.
But then I came back with the reality of like, oh, now I have to finish the film, and I have no idea like
Yeah.
what to do or how to do it. I had filmed all these different stories, but couldn't find like the cohesive narrative. But that was the 2012 jump where I was just like, this is a labor of love. I want to pursue this. I was still relatively young, I wish
Okay.
I'd have done it 5 years sooner. I could have done that story, but I wish
Yeah.
I'd have like moved to New York and followed my heart more than trying to build a business. And so I did, and I just dropped everything and went off. Everyone thought I was crazy, especially
Yeah.
like from my hometown. But boy, I sure showed them. Yeah. So
Love
that
it.
set off the whole next journey. So 2012 was just the leap.
Yep.
I mean, then I had to go through that whole arc, which had its
Yeah.
ups and downs, and then you come out of that, and it starts another one, and
Yeah.
it's a cycle.
Yep. And then you went on to co-found a company a few years later.
Capture Fully, yes.
Yes.
So no, yeah, that was 2022, 2023, which has evolved into Heartfelt, which you mentioned.
Yep.
When I came back from making that film and finally finished, I will fast forward and say there is a happy ending. We sold it to Red Bull.
You did a big showing of it too.
We did a big showing of it. We won Best of the Fest at the Hip Hop Film Festival in New York. And we licensed it to Red Bull TV, which was popular at that time, especially for action sports. So it was a great fit. And it was an outstanding, victory for a self-financed, super duper duper low budget documentary film that was basically a one-person crew. I did have some help when we started editing it. But in terms of production, it was just me. And it was really cool. Over the next couple of years, I would get people that would be on like British Airways, and they'd see my film on the
That's cool.
on the screen, on the entertainment screen. They'd send me pictures of that, which was amazing. And ultimately that launched what I started doing next, and what I'm still doing in between creative projects.
Yeah.
I was basically exhausted. I mean, when you work as a filmmaker or any artist where everything is project based, it's ebbs and flows, it's peaks and valleys. And luckily, and I was lucky, because I don't know what the percentage is, but most people in that situation don't sell those films and make any money back. And I didn't necessarily make money. I just basically broke even for all the time I had spent and money I'd spent on it for a few years. But I couldn't do it like that again. So I was like, what can I do to complement these big creative projects that I want to pursue that you usually pay for?
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you break even. If you're really lucky, you make money. But still, it takes a lot out of you. What can I do to pay the bills in between? Started looking at what I had learned through that process, which was absolutely how do we like tell stories that speak to the hearts of your audience effectively, quickly, when you don't have a lot of time, money, and resources. As a documentary filmmaker, that's always the trick. And so I started teaching. I started writing, public speaking. I wrote a book in 2021. I started teaching brands how to use storytelling, because everybody had to be a content creator by that point. Now we're in 2017-ish, right? Everybody is tasked with creating content, or at least it leveled the playing field where I can get the same attention as someone like Nike, at least in theory. If I do a great enough video that I can go viral. I don't have to pay to play at that time. Then a few years later, you did, but you could create good content. But those brands and those business people most of them weren't artists, filmmakers, writers. So I started serving them on like, how do I help people that are just super overwhelmed, wearing a lot of hats at like a small company, and under-resourced. So nonprofits, startups, solopreneurs, people like that. I wasn't helping Sony and Apple and Nike be great storytellers. They already were. They had the best agencies in the world creating their content. But I was helping out the 6-person nonprofit, or the 1-person coaching, life coach or whatever coach, just one person who's trying to carve a career out of who they are and what they do, what they love to do. And that became, how I really started shaping my career. And then I would still do my client projects as well as my creative projects after that.
We call it the 99% because of my full-time job. That's who we look to serve is the small and mid-sized business, the 99%
Yeah.
that aren't, like you said, these big guys who already have all these in-house or out-of-house agencies working with them. How do you help the small guys? So I
Totally.
love that you do that because it is somebody who's wearing multiple hats with a million things hanging off the side of their desk. How do you make sure to help them in the easiest way possible?
Yeah, and when I started getting in that space and having my own, that's when I started the storytelling
Yeah.
lab. I started meeting other storytelling experts
Yeah.
and thought leaders, and many of them might conjure up a lot of imposter syndrome in someone like me because they might have spent 20 years at Nike or at some,
Yeah.
a place, 10 years at Google where it's like you're working with the best of the best. And now they're going to come out, or Pixar, and now
Yeah.
they're going to come out and they're going to help business people be storytellers. Well, man, they've got a leg up on me.
Yeah.
But they don't if you understand what your unique perspective is. That's
Yeah.
why I worked to fight for the underdogs, because you don't have to be 20 years in the game to look back and say, here's how I did it. I won't be for everybody.
Yeah.
Here's how I did it. Here's how I navigated not having a lot of money, having to shoot and edit everything myself,
Yeah.
having to produce, having to direct, having to write when I didn't have a lot of time and
Yeah.
money. Now, could you, one person communications team at a small nonprofit, could you use that perspective and that
Yeah.
experience? Yes, absolutely. You don't need the person who spent 10 years at Microsoft.
Yeah.
I can help you. And so that's why I was really clear and intentional about helping
Yeah.
that 99%.
I love that you're super clear though, and you were like who you're able to help and who it's not a niche down, but in a sense it is a niche that you've found your group of people. And so I love that because I think a lot of people are like, I can help everybody.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to niche down. I
Yeah.
think often people think that just means like demographically, like I can
Yeah.
only help out, soccer players from Eastern North Carolina
Yeah.
or something like that, where it's like, no, you can help out lots of different people that are struggling with the same struggle
Yeah.
that you help uniquely solve
Yep.
based on your unique perspectives that were shaped by your unique experiences. That's my path to all of it. So, yeah, you have to be clear about it, but there are a lot of different ways to reach that point of clarity of like, okay, who do I help and why, or how and why?
Yep.
Yeah.
With Heartfelt, what made you say, okay, I'm gonna go found my own thing. I'm gonna go create my own little video space here.
Yeah, so this is the first time that I've been a part of a real team. Now,
Okay.
I hesitate to say that because like every film is a team, of course.
Yeah.
But I've been a solopreneur my whole career, so 20 years now. So this is the first time I have worked with a team of founders to raise money, like find investors, raise money, pitch those investors, raise money, build a product. My wife is in the startup space, so I have a lot of insight and behind the scenes knowledge of that space. But otherwise, like that's not my experience level. So it was a big learning opportunity for me. Now it was based on storytelling. It was based on my career.
Yeah.
So that's where I come in with all the creative. We have technical person, the kind of business development person, strategy person, etc. So we had a good team that come from different backgrounds and perspectives. But I didn't feel completely in the weeds because it's family storytelling. It's basically making documentaries out of our loved ones' stories. So we interview them, we train story guides, we call them. So interviewers, storytellers, which is basically taking everything that I've learned over 20 years, which I did the math and I've done over 1,000 interviews in that time, which seems crazy, but I added it up. And so I take everything that I've learned doing those. I have done a ton of short documentaries for a rare cancer foundation nonprofit that's been a client of mine for 13 years. And that really was one of the types of stories that led to this. They're superhuman, super heartfelt, down to earth, just 6 to 10 minute stories about how someone navigates this rare cancer. So we take that and apply it to these life stories. How can I, in a short amount of time, capture someone's stories? How do I train the interviewers to be able to go deeper? Because it's not just where you grew up, what school you went to, what you did for a job. It's not the surface level. You have to be trained to pull back those, metaphoric layers of the onion, right? To get to the deeper emotional stuff. And listen, most times, especially with the age demographic, we are often interviewing baby boomers.
Yep.
They're reluctant to talk about certain things. You have to be skilled and empathic and able to go there without making them feel forced or pushed and vulnerable. But you have to, and this is all storytelling, you have to frame it in a way where it feels like you're naturally pulling it out of them. And the feedback we got says absolutely that. What I thought I was talking to like a friend, or I've told that story guide things I haven't told my family. Well, that's because they're so comfortable. We've put them in a space where they feel so comfortable. They're just having a conversation. It's not an interview. It's just a conversation. So that's been something that's been really exciting for me, because it takes my life's work and puts it in a bigger pool of opportunity. Right. We're building a product that the reason we're doing it is because I literally created one of these for one of the co-founders who was my client and then became my mentor and friend. And I made one of these for his father. And that was the impetus. But we knew that he hired me as a private filmmaker to go create this film about his dad's life. Well, it took long time, months, and lots of money for what the average person could spend on something like that. So we wanted to build something that made it accessible, because emotionally people would see that. He would show it to people who didn't know his father, and they would cry watching it. Why am I crying watching this stranger's story? Well, because it makes me think of my father. It's very simple, right? That is storytelling. So we were like, how can we bottle that up and streamline the process so that we can make it affordable and accessible to most people? And that's been the journey. So that's been really exciting for me, and was really helpful. The storytelling teaching that I did from 2006, 17, 18 till now, because I wasn't just making movies and feeling like, oh, this is just an art and I'm special because I'm a storyteller, but I actually broke down the science and the formula behind it so I could understand the templates that we could use to pre-build these stories in a way so we could do the post-production super quickly. That's what we needed to do. The thing that takes the most time in video production, or in editing rather, is the creative decision making. It doesn't take a lot of time to make a cut or make a transition, or even to add graphics, right? The biggest decision is in the assembly and the rough cut. Like, what is the story that we want to tell? If we can reduce drastically that amount of time by kind of knowing where we want to go, the templates, right? Then it becomes easier to kind of drop those pieces in, and it doesn't lose the emotional resonance or impact because it's someone's loved one's story. It's not a story about this space or a story about the Coca-Cola bottling plant or whatever. It's a story about people and your people. So you don't see that it's a very similar structure as someone else's story. There's not but so many stories that we can live out, right? So that has been really exciting, to turn this thing that has been very much an art form into a product without compromising the beauty and the heart behind it, which is why when we pivoted last year, Heartfelt became the brand, because we were like, what do we want people to feel? Everybody else in this space is like, story this, story that, right? And that's what it is, but not what it does and how it makes people feel. So we intentionally leaned into that because that was what we kept coming back to.
In that creative process and that creation that you were just talking about, of how do you make the story flow together, is there a fine line you are dancing between emotions, but at the same time we want the storytelling to make sense, or are they just so interwoven with each other?
They are absolutely interwoven with each other. And I often talk about that storytelling gets misconstrued sometimes as just emotional and the warm fuzzies and the touchy feelies, but it is not. It has always been a way to use emotion to deliver information. So it's not an intellectual versus emotional. It's both. They're two sides of the same coin. You deliver the information through the emotion, because we don't, as humans, do well just being overloaded with information. We tune it out. There's a whole, I could go into a whole tangent about why that has happened just in our evolutionary biology and the neuroscience behind all of that, but we tune that out. So you that's how you deliver any information. It's communication. Storytelling is not some buzzword. It's not some, it is simply how we communicate as people. We communicate internally and externally through narrative. So you are telling the story the whole time, but in this particular use case, it's less about the sequence of events and way more about how those events changed and shaped the person
Okay.
that your loved one became. So yes, my mother-in-law moved from Guyana to America. Okay, so we want to know that. We'd like to know what order they came in and
Yeah.
all of that. But what really matters is, how did that change you?
Yeah.
Why was it difficult to make that transition? What did you miss? And now looking back 40 years later or more, how pivotal was that
Yeah.
moment in your life in determining who you are at 65?
Yeah.
And all of those moments add up and make it. So that's what we're looking at. And stories, if you look at any movie that you love, it's made up of these really small moments, significant moments of change. So in life, that's usually adolescence,
Yep.
right? Changing from a child to an adult. That's usually, if there's some transition like that, like I moved from this place to this place
Yeah.
significantly, that's usually marriage or having a family. Retirement might be one, losing people might be one, becoming a grandparent. Like any of these moments of change, that's where the significant stuff is
Yeah.
happening in storytelling and in life.
Yep. Yeah, it's really those are the moments that make us, and what we've heard are the big pivotal moments in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they say, like in screenwriting, which I'm focusing a lot of my creative time on now,
Yeah.
one of the quote unquote rules, it's not a rule, but it's when you think about character, it's like when you're trying to show who that person is, you have to do that through the choices that they make in those tough decisions, in those hard times. That's how you show who they are. It's the same thing in real life.
Yeah.
Your values are demonstrated by the choices that you make, or the response and the reaction you have to these trying times. How you show up when you move from Guyana to Washington, D.C., how
Yeah.
you show up when you lose a family member.
Yeah.
That's how we show who we are and our characters are. It's the same. Life, life is storytelling.
Yes, absolutely. I want to get into a little bit of the business side, and
Yes.
you sold your first film to Red Bull. You went through that entire process. Where there are a new set of challenges coming onto this now team of Heartfelt, of investors trying to get money to bring in all of these things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a whole nother, I don't want to say whole nother headache. That's what, but that is a whole nother challenge is the better
Yes.
word. Right. I mean, so when you start off, and that's all storytelling as well. When you start off, it is generally friends and family, like anything. And it's not dissimilar from raising money for a self-financed film. Same thing with Raise Up. I raised some money here and there. And that's challenging because you have to navigate those relationships where you're asking for something from someone. And you also have to get them to see what you see and believe in you. Storytelling is the way to do that. You have to paint the picture of what you see this thing turning out to be and what it might mean for them to get in and help become a part of that and help create that thing.
Yep.
But then that evolves, and then you go on to maybe more of a smaller practice and investment firm before you get into VCs and stuff like that. And the thing for me is why I love being a documentary filmmaker is I get to learn these different parts of life and society and culture in every project that I do. So I get to dive deeper into this like subculture. And so for me, it's also very interesting to learn all of these things because I don't have that startup experience, that kind of business experience. So it's been very fun for me to be part of that process and learn. But business is always storytelling as well.
Yeah.
Understanding where you're trying to go. What are the obstacles that are coming your way? What are the stakes of what you're trying to accomplish? Who are you serving, right? What is the ultimate mission that you're trying to achieve? So, without sounding super cheesy, like life is storytelling. It's all storytelling. That includes business too. For me, that's been a good opportunity to learn and also very exciting. And it's always a challenge. This is why it was fairly, let me see how I can put this. I'm not shaky, like it is a shaky ground.
Yeah.
It is not for everybody to be an entrepreneur, to be in the startup space, because it is not a secure position to be in. You have to be comfortable shooting from the hip. You have to be comfortable on shaky ground, not knowing what's coming next. But as an independent, documentary filmmaker, like that is what my life has always been. Being any kind of artist is that you have to pitch yourself and it may not happen. I am not I don't struggle with the challenges so much because there are so many more stories untold in my career and everybody else's than there ever will be told.
Yeah.
So I had to swallow the pill long ago of like that thing you have in your heart and your head that you want to see out in the world may not happen.
Yeah.
Time and time again. And that is the hardest part of entrepreneurship is you believe in this thing or else you wouldn't have agreed to do it.
Yeah.
But you also have to know that it might not happen. So how do you pursue that?
Yeah.
Keeping that faith and building to the point, knowing that you're going to have to raise another round, you're going to have to raise another round, you're going to have to pivot, you're going to have to iterate, et cetera, et cetera. I think filmmaking taught me that very well. I have projects that we shot everything is in the can and they still didn't get made. So I'm not talking about just being greenlit. I'm saying like, and I know people that have cut the whole thing and it still didn't see the light of day. I mean, it's painful, but you get used to that pain. And to me, it makes it a little bit easier to step into the startup space where some people would rather not have that headache. But you have to know that it's just a constant evolution.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're seeing more and more of this entrepreneur, solopreneur than we are seeing people in corporate America because people are finding out like, I don't belong in this space. I don't belong in corporate because there's sometimes a limitation on you get put into this box that people are like, I don't want to be in this box anymore. I want to be able to go do some cool shit. I want to be able to go put my own stuff out.
Everything's changed. The pandemic did a lot for that.
Yeah.
Some people were forced into that decision and then others just saw life a different way.
Yes.
Most of us did. There's a big push, not push now, but culturally we have shifted to where we're caring more about the quality of life, and the work-life balance is kind of the cliche term that you hear. People care more about it. And not to bash baby boomers or any older generation, but the pushback is like, oh, kids don't want to work these days. And I've always been in a unique position, not generationally, but just in general, of being able to typically see both sides of an argument.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I will take both sides or ride the fence on all things, but I understand. I empathize.
Getting into more of the storytelling aspect and everything that you've gone and taught about, what's one overlooked aspect of storytelling that people should pay more attention to?
From a brand perspective, from a business perspective? Absolutely understanding understanding your brand and your unique perspective. This does not just, I worked with a lot of coaches or solopreneurs.
Yeah.
That is very much about understanding like who you are and how you help people and why. Yep. And I have an exercise for them that helps them find that based on their unique skills, their unique passions, and also their experiences, who and where they come from that have informed the way they view the world, your perspective.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of what you have to offer. I think it's very similar to companies. And I've always said, like, if I gave all of us, if we had 100 people here in the room, and we gave them all $100,000 and said, make a documentary about podcasting.
Yeah.
Well, each of those 100 documentaries would be different. We should have 100 different documentaries. We should.
Yes.
Right? Because each of those people are different. Somebody would talk about the history of podcasting. Yeah. Somebody would talk about, the medium of audio broadcasting in general. Yeah. Somebody would talk about their favorite podcast. Yes. Somebody would, yada, yada, yada. That's the whole point is that when given the same resources and parameters, we should bring ourselves to the table. I think it's the same way with companies. And I'm actually working on an upcoming book that is about the position of chief storytelling officer.
Okay.
So the book, most brands at this point can't afford a dedicated person for that role. You're seeing that role more and more in bigger companies. The big companies like Microsoft and Nike were doing it decades ago. Yep. But most small businesses, certainly solopreneurs or small nonprofits, they can't afford someone to be dedicated for that role, but that doesn't mean that the responsibilities of that role should go unmet. So I'm writing a book that will hopefully, the working title is CSO on the Go. So hopefully working as a manual for those companies. And what I want that to do, and regardless, what I want people to understand is your internal narrative, your through line from the top down is so important so that everybody, all the stakeholders, all the employees, everybody involved with your company understands the overall vision, like the story that we're subscribing to internally, so that all your external communications are aligned and woven together with that narrative thread.
Yep.
So we did this with Heartfelt. And it's just a branding guide, like
Yeah.
brand essence. Some people call it, there's a brand house, but just understanding like what you start very simply. And we did this exact exercise in one word, sum up what it is you all offer, provide,
Yeah.
do, stand for, your one core value,
Yeah.
not 10. You can't have 10 core values, just like you can't have 10 priorities, right? What is the one word, your true north, your North Star? For us, it was connection.
Okay.
And it was not just about family, because this may turn into other use cases. We may, for military or veterans, for healthcare, for anything. We're trying to help democratize personal storytelling. So it's not about family. It is about connection. Everything that we do, we want to establish a stronger connection. So we help connect families that are close even deeper. I've had people say, I'm very close with my mom, but I haven't even heard some of these stories. And we also help connect those families that aren't so close. Because now you hear finally how your mom feels about you because she told a stranger. Not you. Right? So that is where we start at first. Okay, then you start to look at, if that is our true north, that has to be woven in everything that we do. We don't have to drop that word in everything, but even all the way cascading all the way down to your social media post today. Is it working towards that? Is it working towards establishing connection? Have you tried to create connection in that post? And of course, on your bigger marketing strategies and campaigns, that should be woven through there. And you break down like, okay, well, what's our functional benefits? What's our emotional benefits that stem from that connection? So that's something that I think goes overlooked and neglected quite a bit, is that there's not a cohesive narrative woven all the way through the organization. Then you don't have to tell your salespeople what to do, and you don't have to hope that they say the right thing. They know how to represent your company. They know how to illustrate what you're trying to achieve in a way that will make that customer buy, or if you're pitching to an investor, what would make them invest. So that is the thing I think that they need to understand more than anything else, is what is your core story as a company, your brand narrative. How do you show up? What is the change you're trying to affect in the world in a way that everybody is aligned on the same page at any given day? It makes organizations stronger. It makes the story clearer for everybody involved. And that's the thing I go back to. I think I've already said it, where it's not a marketing term. It's just communication. We as humans have always communicated through narrative, and communication is embedded in all business. You're communicating to your customer, you're communicating to your boss or to the person you manage, you're communicating to your investors and stakeholders. It's nothing but communication anytime you're collaborating with other people. So storytelling should be embedded in all of that. And if you're good at it, you do that intentionally and consciously.
Yeah, because even from a position that I sit in right now, you think about it, it's even from you want to make sure the storytelling is the same at a booth at a trade show to a video that's getting made about a product, whatever it may be. You want it to be completely cohesive. I think some people focus a little bit too much on the look of it being cohesive, and that's where things get a little sticky, that I've seen recently, is like, yes, you want it to look cohesive as well, but the story needs to be the same language, the same whatever words, terms that we want to be using. That's what needs to be cohesive with each other.
Absolutely. And if anyone on your team doesn't understand where you're going, what the story is, and more importantly, their role in the story, I think that's a failure. And that's how you get that disconnect when you go to a trade show or when you go somewhere else. And this has to be done internally and intentionally. It's a cultural thing. And someone has to establish that at the top of the culture. And it can be challenging because it's something that you have to believe. You have to see it work to really believe in it. Because there's a lot of people that, again, think it's that touchy-feely and not what's the immediate ROI. It's one of those things that you feel the pain from before you tend to feel the positive results, like the pain from neglecting it, because you have people out there and there's no cohesion. But if you do that intentionally from the beginning and empower everybody, this is important too, to be storytellers on the team, it makes that team dynamic so much more powerful. It makes communication up and down much more powerful. This is not a one-way street where it's only the managers and the top level C-suite folks telling stories
Yes.
downward. It has to be a
It has
collaborative
to be everybody.
two-way street. Absolutely. And the positive organizations that do this where they have a storytelling based environment, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Anyone can propose an idea. It's an open door. Story listening is just as important as storytelling.
Yep, 100% agree. I want to get into a little bit of the evolution of things that you have seen. You have from Flying Flounder Productions to 6 Second Stories. You've truly gotten to see different storytelling formats. You've gotten to see different cameras come into play here. How has the industry evolved since you first picked up a camera and started doing your work?
Quite a bit. I mean, I'm very much an elder millennial.
Yeah.
And we take a lot of pride in our 1 foot being in the analog world and 1 foot being in the digital world. We got the best of both, baby. But it's very true. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s before this digital revolution.
Yeah.
Yet we're able to navigate the internet for the most part, unlike our parents.
Able to use Google.
Right. Oh my gosh. I was helping my mom with something this week. Anyways.
I get calls every week.
Right.
Apparently I'm Geek Squad.
Oh
my
yeah, we
family.
all are.
Yeah.
We all are. And it'll be like, no, you just click that link. So I have seen a massive transition. Everybody talks about it like, oh, it's always been that way. And we have nothing as hockey sticked in terms of the exponential growth that we've seen in technology in the past 20 years. So the biggest thing that I have seen is the absolute democratization of the tools of storytelling, right? So everyone has the ability to do it. Now, when I was starting, it was right at the tail end of big lights, big cameras, editing rooms, right? I edited that feature film on my laptop that I sold to Red Bull, right? And that was in 2015 when I was editing that. So a massive change as to who can play in the field. And before my time, it was very gatekeepy, or just like you had to be one of the select few that was either willing to make the investment to get the stuff and learn it, or selected by someone else to be in it. Now anybody can play, and that's fine by me. That puts and we can talk about this in terms of AI too. But my philosophy has always been, no tool is better than the hand that holds it. I want to help people build the skill of storytelling so that you can work with whatever tool that you have. And that I backed into that because I've never been good at the technical aspect of anything. That's not my style. And it created a lot of imposter syndrome in me when some of my friends are incredible cinematographers and they're doing stuff with video cameras. And I've been working with a video camera for 20 years and they'll do stuff working just 5 years. That's just incredible. But it took a long road for me to realize that's not what I'm here for. And that's why I can be a writer or a podcaster or a filmmaker or whatever other medium that comes out there. Live storyteller, I do that as well. I'm a public speaker. So that is what I try to help people do, as well as understand the skill. And then as you get more experience and time goes on, you add tools to the toolbox to accomplish that and to use that skill better or more efficiently. That's what tools are. Often, though, we as people think that the tools are the way forward, just the tools, without cultivating the skill. And that's why you see a lot of people out there with cameras that shouldn't have cameras, or that's fine, or podcast mics that shouldn't have podcast mics. No names, but you see that all the time, and you see people like talk about it. It's like anybody can play these days, and I've never saw that. I mean, I get why people do. Again, I get both sides. I get why people do see that as a problem. It's oversaturated the market, et cetera, et cetera. But even more proves that your unique voice is the most valuable thing you have. There's something that I say that's very TED Talk. It's like a one-liner, but I did use it in my TED Talk. But it's like, plenty of people out there have your skills, and many of them better, more skilled than you will ever be. And anybody can have your tools. Anybody. That's just money is the only barrier there. But not a single person on the entire planet has your story. Nobody. And they never can. They can have similar. They can have close.
But it's not the exact.
But it'll never be your story. Why don't we leverage that more? It's crazy to me. That is the one thing, and you can't convince me otherwise. That is the one thing that we as people uniquely own ourselves that nobody can have. Even if 9 parts of my story you have.
Yeah.
There's still the 10th part. And I should look at that 10th part to see how I see the world differently than you, especially if we're in the same space.
Yep.
And I should look at that 10th part to understand who can I help out better with my unique perspective than someone else that might be very similar to me. That's the most powerful thing that I think that we have. And that's why when AI starts to, become as ubiquitous as it is becoming before our very eyes, of course, it's a little disconcerting and a little worrisome for anybody just to this is moving very, very fast.
Yes.
But at this point, I see it as a tool.
Yeah.
And it's not going to make you a better writer than me. It might make you finish that first draft faster than me. And that's how I think that artists and entrepreneurs need to know how to use it. Many people already are using it as a cure-all for everything. And that's why you see the LinkedIn comments that we were kind of talking about before we started recording, that it's just like, dude, you're all saying this, even not the comments, even the posts.
Yeah.
It's like, this is all the same thing. You're all using the same cookie cutter. You're all saying the same stuff. And it's being commented on by a bunch of bots that are, it's wild.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, that doesn't help anybody that's really trying to make significant change in their lives. And I would much rather help someone make a real difference in their life.
Yeah.
This is going to make it sound a little cheesy perhaps, but I'd much rather help that person than get paid by a lot of people that don't actually make the difference in their life.
Yeah.
That's just me. I'm not trying to sound holier than thou or something like that. I've just never been interested going back to that corporate job in New York and doing the thing that's easier or that just makes money, because I've always rather follow my passion and find a way to pay my bills doing that. And I'm more than happy to take the hard road to do that.
Yep. I love how you pointed out of your friend had been, in for 5 years and you with 20, like the differences there. I myself, I taught myself how to edit, and it was one of those things that for 8 years, that's what I've been doing, is just constantly teaching myself. But I work with somebody very closely who's a video producer at my full-time job. And I'm like, I will never, ever be able to do the cool shit that he does. But I'm very comfortable over here in my little circle because I know how to edit this type of content and this type of long form, while he's over here and he's got this short form and he's got this cool animations. I'm very comfortable over here, and I like my little world over here.
If you don't mind, I'll at least tell the story. The person who I often think about with that, and I was probably thinking about when I said that, is a guy named Pat Lincoln. He handles Torch House Media, amazing cinematographer. When we met each other, it was years ago, and we were working at UNC Chapel Hill at an HBO event.
Okay.
And I was the camera operator, and he was a PA. That's how we met. And so that's the dynamic. And I hired him for a few jobs in the years after that. He was a DP on a short film that I created. And now he is one of the best music video directors in the area. He's creating music videos and projects for Grammy Award winning artists, Rhapsody and so forth. And just the visuals that he creates, incredible. And he's so far out of my league, it's not even funny. But we always have that relationship, which is now very much more peers. But when his company was looking for someone to be on camera for a video that they were doing, I'm the first person he thought about, and I did that. And that may or may not, I don't even know, but that may not be a skill of his. Yeah. But the thing is, I had to go through that and realize it's like, I'm not a videographer. That's right. Or, I'm not a camera operator. I can operate a camera just like I can mow a lawn, but I'm not a landscaper. Have I done landscaping? Yeah. When I was younger and even when I was older on other crews, but I'm not a landscaper. I'm not a person that can go out there and see your dirty, dusty yard and create this oasis in my mind and then make it happen by going to Lowe's.
Fountain and everything.
Right, exactly. That's not me. Yeah. And I'm not a cinematographer either. I am a storyteller. And my power has always been in my words. And I can use that on stage, on the screen, or on the page.
I love that. I love that. Now I have you as a landscaper in my mind.
I've done a lot. I love landscaping. It's honestly, I love that type of work. I grew up in a rural area and I love outdoor work so much. And so I did. I was mowing yards at 8, 9 years old.
Love it. I love it. I find it to be so peaceful. I'm like, yes.
It is. But I do know real landscapers, and that's how I know I'm not one of them. Like I couldn't and could never be. Yeah, it's not, I'm not that because I haven't done enough. I
Yeah.
could never be. I don't have that
Yeah.
skills. That's so much a part of the journey, is realizing what you are or what you could be and what you're not and what you could never be.
Yeah.
And sometimes we tend to hold on to that ladder a little too
Yes.
long. And I was one of those where I wanted to be this and I wanted to be that. And it's like, bro, you ain't. So instead, find what you are and what you do better and, more importantly, differently than anybody else, and double down on that.
Yep. 100%. I want to get to one of the other hats that you wear and the shirt that you're wearing, podcast host.
Okay, yes. Oh, that's okay. We're branded today. I just got these.
I love it. Is the Storytelling Lab. I want to get into why, on top of all these other hats that you were wearing at the time.
I don't know.
Why?
Sorry.
I love the
You
answer.
tell me.
Why am I doing these things? Why go put this hat on? Why start this particular podcast?
Okay. I am so happy that I did this. And it was one of those things that I did with no expectation of a return.
Okay.
Now it's actually become a real show and is getting some decent download. I don't know. I was just looking today at how to improve it. But because it's not, when you see those people out there, it's just like, this is clean, I don't have that. But again, but that's not that's not what I'm bringing to the table. And I should remind myself about that, because it's always been what I have to say and offer, and not necessarily how I present it that has worked for me. But it is now starting to pay a little bit, but maybe just enough to cover costs. I'm not really making profit off of it. But when I first started, it was certainly not with that intention in mind. It was just to continue to position myself as a thought leader in the storytelling space. So I would talk about storytelling. I'd have guests on. I'd have clients on, and we'd talk about how we did their video or whatever. But the most valuable thing by far that has come from that, no dollars, is just the connections. Now, some of those early days, the connections that I would have would lead to money, for sure. I mean, some of them, because I'd have them on the show. They'd think of me whenever someone in their world was like, "Who's a video? We need to make a video with our company." "Oh, I was just on the story. You should talk to Rain Bennett." And so it definitely indirectly led to some monetary compensation or whatever return we can call it. But way more valuable than that, it was the connections that I made. And what I mean by that is the people that I've had on there, many of them heroes of mine, that are now friends, that are now on a first name basis. And some of them that are in a space that I may come to sometime when I have an ask, or at least I have someone to read my screenplay, for example, that is in the space and would have a qualified opinion. Now, you have to be very not cautious is not the right word, but you don't want to overstay your welcome with anything like that. So I don't think I've made any ask other than maybe some blurbs in my book, but that's a good example. I could go to people who were storytelling experts and well-known in the storytelling space and say, "Hey, could you write 2 sentences about my book?" And I've got almost all yeses for that. So that's a good example where it's like a low lift. It's a little bit bigger lift, like, "Hey, could you read the screenplay, and do you know anybody who would want it?" But I at least have the connections of people that I could ask, that at the very least could say, maybe not me, but show it to this person, and it really matter. But more than that, I just the people that I've met on there that I consider peers and contemporaries and colleagues and friends now has been absolutely amazing. Now that the show has grown and is becoming bigger, it is something that that is becoming another revenue stream for me that I am happy to pursue, because I was doing it for free. So absolutely. And I learn something every time, because I have storytelling, experts on the show. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Like, I have people on the show that on paper could be viewed as competitors. They're keynote speakers, they're authors, they're storytelling coaches, all the things that are on my LinkedIn bio. Right. But if it's not clear how I do what I do in the storytelling space differently than them, then I need to get back to work. Like, they come from 10 years at Microsoft. How do they approach it? I come from independent documentary filmmaking background. How did that shape my storytelling knowledge, and who do I serve best with it? That's what you need to find out. So I love it. I absolutely love it. We've already lined up guests for this season. I usually take January and July off. I do 2 seasons a year. So we're coming back next week and have amazing guests coming up. So that's something that I'll do for the foreseeable future. I am probably driving it to a very comprehensive storytelling book that, because we see a lot of through lines in people's perspectives. Now I have all different storytellers on there, marketers, screenwriters, authors, storytelling coaches, yada, yada, yada. But we always seem to come back to the same themes. And so I'm currently marinating on the early ideas of like what that might look like in a book format.
Did you just go to Podfest and pitch your
Heck yeah. Podfest was awesome.
and pitch
Have
your
you ever
next
been?
book? I wanted to this year, but I couldn't.
It's amazing. It was my first year. So for any podcasters, I would highly recommend it. It's been going on like over
It's cool.
10 years, but it was amazing. It was absolutely
Did you
amazing.
pitch a new book though to there?
I did. It was the one we
were talking about.
we talked about the chief storytelling officer, but absolutely.
I saw that and I was like, that's fucking awesome.
It was awesome. I didn't go for that. I went to meet. I went to okay. So the storytelling lab has gotten a little more serious.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what happens if we actually invest some time and money and like learn how to monetize and learn how to market and learn properly, as well as meet people that I thought might be guests. I met a lot of people that I had wanted to be on the show and got on the show.
Yeah.
A lot of people that was just like, I know you from social media land, but never seen them in real life. It was outstanding.
Yeah.
That was a side thing that I didn't even bank on, but they had an author track this year, as well as like an AI track, editing track, yada, yada, yada. And so they had on the first night a pitch fest, like a speed pitching round. So I was like, I already was going to self-publish the book anyway and write it. So it was already top of mind, very clear who I wanted it to be for and what problem it was going to solve. So I pitched it and came back and talked to him the next day. And I think we're going to do it. Yeah.
Does it make you nervous having to pitch people in person compared to?
No, I'm way better in person. I've always been that way. I got my first scholarship to college through an in-person interview. I never showed up on paper well. That's why it goes back to my power's always been in my words. And I didn't realize that connection until right now. I've always known that I've been better in person in interviewing.
Yeah.
But like, I was pretty smart, but I kind of fell off later in high school, just interested in sports and other things, other extracurriculars. And so, I didn't show up that well on paper, but when I got in front of someone, I've always been able to convince people. So I don't mind pitching, but the real reason I was confident is because I had already thought about these things.
Yeah.
I had already thought about who it's for, what problem it solves, how I'm going to market it. So it was an easy yes for them because I so clearly shaped it into this nice little ball. And I was like, here's my idea. And they're like, oh, I can see it. Yeah. People go up all the time at pitches and they just throw the loose idea out there. And it's like, okay, who's it for?
Yeah.
A person that I know was also pitching in the speed pitch round, had that exact situation happen where it was a great idea. They were, tell me more. Talk. And they're like, who do you envision this book being for? To be honest, I don't really know yet. And that's okay. Yeah. Maybe they'll get there, right? Or maybe not. But in that moment, it wasn't enough because they're like, okay, it's not really clearly defined. And so I went in there with a very clear understanding of every shape of it. And that made it a lot easier. And the very first thing to have and reason I like that format is because there's not a damn thing that I do that I'm not passionate about. One would argue I have too many passions, but there's nothing that I do that I'm like ho-hum about. And if I do it for 3 months, like the job in New York, I'm out. Like that's about all I can do. So it's easy for me to talk about the things that I do and I'm pitching because I'm always my full in heart behind it, knowing my heart might get stomped at the end of it, but I don't care. That's the journey.
Yeah. I love that. As I've gotten older, I've gotten better at standing up and presenting in front of people. Like I've always been not one that's had to go teach themselves how to public speak. Like I was good public speaker, but as I've gotten older, I've tried to work on it more where I don't feel like I'm going to black out and completely feel like I'm going to forget everything that's going to happen. And it's enjoyable. I've never been the writer. My sister's always been the writer.
Got you.
And I've always been the speaker.
I find that when you get out of your head and stop making it about you and make it about why it needs to exist in the world, i.e. who wants it.
Yeah.
It becomes easier. But we often show up in those pitches like, here's what I want to do. Here's my idea. Here's my idea for a book. Instead of, this is the book idea.
Yep.
Here's why it needs to exist and who would want to buy it. That's a lot different in terms of you clearly demonstrating, what it is and why it needs to be there. But it's also better for them, the people with the money or that people that have to say yes to hear it, because everybody's got great ideas.
Yeah.
ideas are absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, like they just are,
Yeah.
because everybody has good ideas every day, or many people have great ideas every day. Execution is everything. And you can't execute that idea unless you know how I'm going to do it, who is it for, and how am I going to get it to them.
Yeah.
When I showed up at that speed pitching round and I explained all of those things in 90 seconds, it was like, oh, we should talk tomorrow. Now there was a little bit of serendipity and luck because that publisher does a lot of business books, and they had actually done people in the storytelling space that I wanted to be on the show. Here's another thing about connection. And they're like, oh, we can get him on the phone right now.
Yeah.
So if I was pitching to, YA fiction publisher,
Right.
it wouldn't have hit the same way.
Yeah.
But that just goes back to like taking advantage of opportunities, right? But you have to have those things thought of. If I'd have taken advantage of that opportunity without everything fleshed out, it would have ended in no result.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always, again, the marriage of the intellectual and the emotional, even in that pitching. You can't just have the passion without the plan, and you can't just have the plan without the passion.
Yeah.
That's a pull
I love
quote.
that. Love that.
Print it. Headline.
It's gonna be the small print on the front of the cover.
No, the big print. That's the headline. Are you a fan of The Office?
Yes.
Even when Michael Scott was like, here's the headline. Dunder Mifflin. Some companies, and he had done like the whole newspaper by the time he finished. Some companies still know how to treat their customer.
Oh
I
my
forget what it was.
God.
Some Office fan, if they do hear that, it's going to be, that's not what he said, but you get the drift.